Well, welcome, Jonathan. It's a pleasure to get to talk with you today. And it's been a real pleasure planning this exhibition with you. For everyone out there just tuning in, this is Johnathan Hopp. And Jonathan has a solo, I say solo exhibition, but there's a few collaborative pieces with Galley Greenspan in our current show. And I'm trying to think, Jonathan, we met, was it 2 years ago? Was it almost 2 years ago? At an Ensika when we started talking. So it's really cool to see this materialize, and especially in lieu of things being a little more difficult to materialize these days. I'm really grateful that you were able to push through and get studio time through all these transitions, and that we were able to still pull this off with you. So, but yeah, I guess a good starting place that I kind of been bringing up in these conversations is for those that don't know you. I always look to kind of figure out how you got started and what maybe inspired you to get into clay, and kind of how you're where you are today. So kind of a brief background from you would be great.
Right. So first I want to return the thanks as well, because thanks for giving me a spot and hosting this show, and having faith in the work and that I'd be able to pull it through these difficult times, and also like hosting this show during pandemic, riots, and crazy forest fires, and every plague possible in the universe, pretty much. Hopefully
no locusts come flying in next.
Let's hope so.
We'll save them for October.
Thanks. What was the question?
Locusts, your experience with locusts. What brought you into clay? Like, what was your entry into art? What initially intrigued you, captivated you, and then kind of just how that started and where your journey went from there.
Yeah. So originally my education is in industrial design. My undergrad degree and my master's are in industrial design, and I started working with ceramics sort of right after my undergrad. And
where were those? For those that, sorry to interrupt you, but where were those for folks that don't know you? Undergrad and grad.
Undergrad at RISD, and my graduate degrees from Bezalel Academy in Jerusalem.
Okay.
So I'm originally from Israel and moved here pretty recently, but after my undergrad, I was, I knew industrial design is a really big, broad field, right? And I knew I wanted to make stuff. Is what I knew I wanted to, and I had skills to do all sorts of things, and especially sort of mold making and casting and so forth. And I discovered that you can cast ceramics, and then you can fire it and just have this like amazing quality object with really minimal equipment and stuff. Like I didn't need like a injection mold machine for plastics or anything, or like any expensive tools.
I guess that's true compared to the other materials you would design with, as it's a different entry point.
Yeah, and I loved casting. This is a process that I've always been interested in, and so when and there's this amazing quality material that you can make with such low sort of initial investment and equipment in your studio, and you can make these amazing things with it. So immediately I was attracted to it and started working, and I basically learned ceramics through all that beginning. I knew nothing.
So like in school, there was not the formal education of that. You had to seek that out, or was there some basics that they gave you in clay?
So a good friend of mine. So in industrial design, we had one picked studio every semester that we could pick, right? So there was one that was production ceramics, and I never took production ceramics, but a good friend of mine in ID, she took in production ceramics, and I kept seeing the stuff she was making. Eventually, so I picked her brain and how it was done, and kind of learned off of that. And we eventually started a studio together in Israel. So that course she had done, that one semester course, became this whole studio for producing ceramics, with really very negligible knowledge in actually making this stuff. But you can learn a lot, and ceramics people are amazingly generous in you know, giving knowledge and teaching and confiding in ideas and secrets and stuff. So
Yeah.
we made friends with ceramics makers and started from there.
Awesome. And then what brought you, so that was in Israel, you said, or Jerusalem?
Yes. Yeah.
And then how did that transition you over to the States?
Yeah.
Or were there stepping stones between?
Yeah. So, you know, many years, it sounds like, you know, I just started yesterday, maybe, from the way I stated, but I've been doing it for 20 years. And I've gained quite a lot of experience and knowledge in the process. Yeah. Thank you. So I have progressed, and I've come to a point where, you know, I'm developing my own processes to work in, and I'm sort of, you know, the ones that I had sort of learned that were the acceptable processes, I'm kind of challenging them and making my own and trying my own stuff, and you know, checking to see what innovation or what new things I can bring. And that brought me eventually to teach in Alfred, in the New York State College of Ceramics, as sort of a design position within the ceramic art division.
Okay.
So I started teaching here 2 years ago.
And that's kind of a newer division, right? I was back there to be like the late 90s, and I don't recall anything like design driven. I feel like I would have remembered, because I would have been really excited about that at that point in my life.
Yeah.
So that is.
Well, the division is still the ceramic art division. So
yeah,
it's so there's, you know, there's students and faculty more interested in pottery or in sculpture or in different parts of ceramics. But I'm sort of bringing in and rethinking what design means in that context.
Yeah.
And how I bring sort of design thinking and some of the tools that we use into the division as well. And that's been going. It's a really interesting process. Like sometimes the students are really interested in it. Sometimes the students, like, I need to pull them, and it's yeah. But we'll put that aside for a moment. But
sure.
that brought me to Alfred, and I've really continued learning as well in this in this space.
Awesome. And then so you've been there 2 years, so that's probably right around the time when you did start kind of experimenting or leading into this current body of work, the one that we are exhibiting right now. Would you like to talk maybe about that transition, or kind of how that ideas came about, or what transitioned there?
Yeah. So I've been working a while with trying to not trying, but succeeding in slip casting and casting ceramics into paper and cardboard molds, and that's been interesting to me, because I've kind of been trying to find my way around the plaster mold and find alternatives for it. And you know, my belief is that sort of when you find your own process, whether it's a good process or you know, whether it's really efficient or really inefficient, in a way, once you find your own process, you can start building your own language within it, and sort of break new territory all the time. There's this feeling of like constantly doing something new and not knowing the answer. Nobody's answered this question before when you make something. So I've been working like that for a while with these paper molds, and then with you know, before, also before I got to Alfred, I was working with this process and exhibited
Okay.
in a bunch of different places. But then here I've been trying, so the first thing you come here is that like, there's big kilns here. There's like, you know, I had a size limit before, like I could make something that about that big.
Wow. Okay.
Maybe like that. That was like the max size.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fit in my kiln. But now it's like, wow, there's like, you know, it's endless. So I started working larger, really, and figuring out how to do that.
Yeah.
And then part of the process has been just like, you know, okay, casting in, you know, these concrete casting tubes, right? These
Yeah.
cardboard tubes that are made to cast concrete, and just getting a lot bigger, just figuring out how to make bigger
Yeah.
things, grow the scale, and then also, you know, just getting more into materials as well, and glazes and layering glazes and seeing what that does. And like this is kind of new territory for me.
Mm-hmm. And it's a little different than the work I'd seen kind of right around when we were first talking, which I feel like definitely falls more into the design realm. Not saying this work isn't, I mean, I was like thinking about I post the work, of course, and tag all your images as design or contemporary design with this body work. I mean, I feel like it's definitely very informed. But compared to some of the work that was really clean and crisp, like the architectural benches and seats, those you've been doing kind of same time or recently as well?
Yeah, I got, you know, once I moved to Alfred, I got the opportunity to participate a couple of times already in something called ACA, which is a architectural ceramics assemblies workshop.
Okay.
So it's this workshop that Boston Valley Terracotta, they're big architectural ceramics manufacturer in Buffalo. They host every year, and they get designers and architects to come to Buffalo and do some sort of ceramics research, right? So more expanding a little bit the vocabulary in the field.
That's awesome. So you're kind of coming to that with ideas, but maybe not knowing if or how it will be executed, and that some of their know-how per se is challenging them in a way. Is this?
I hope a little bit of both. Yeah. Challenging them, and I mean, these benches we made a year ago, they were just inspired of extruding this big chunk of clay, right? So it's so difficult in a studio setting to do that. First of all, to get the machine that can extrude something this diameter.
Yeah.
And to get that big long extrusion that's actually straight, and you know, like physically moving that into the kiln, physically, like, you know, extruding that and cutting it and treating it and moving it is really quite complicated, you know, not because the process is that complicated, it's just the size of it. Yeah. So just being able to get such a nice, I was inspired by just the ability to get that nice, big, accurate piece of clay made. And it becomes like an architectural scale, right? It becomes a different, doesn't need to be a cup anymore. It can be like, you can do other stuff with it. And that's kind of been the challenge in Alfred a little bit, is sort of expanding what ceramics could be, or trying to inspire students and people to think that way.
Yeah. Well, I really liked your comment on inventing ways of working. I that's always been near and dear. And I actually remember when I was back at Alfred, I believe it was Ann Courier in one of her classes, but we had to make some of our own wood tools. And it was pretty, this was pretty simple relative to what you're talking about, but it always was this stepping off point for me, because she said something to that effect where, like, you're never going to get a different mark if you just buy the same tools everybody else has. But the moment you start making your own tools, then you've gone way above and beyond that, of course. But it kind of brings me back to that place of how we sort of create our pathway
Yeah.
in
Yeah, that's
innovation.
great. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
That's
I have
great
no
that
idea
it
if they.
reminded you of that.
I know, and so
Yeah.
that always stuck with me. So some of the pieces in the exhibition, specifically the wall pieces, you collaborated with Gally Greenspan. Could you talk about your guys' relationship or how that collaboration came to be?
I don't know if you want me to discuss our relationship, but we're married, you know. So
Congratulations.
well, for
I'm,
a
I'm
good
teasing.
many years now. But and I won't discuss our relationship, but we do occasionally collaborate. Very rarely. We've done it once
Okay.
before, and this time. But Gali actually started as a ceramic artist, and she actually studied ceramics, and unlike me.
Okay.
And but she's sort of veered away and moved into sculpture and then video. But
Okay.
but lately, actually these panels behind me are hers. So she's gotten a little bit into ceramics again, like returned a little bit. But now she's sort of processing video into ceramics in a way.
Okay.
But yeah, we you know, I love Gali's work. She's a really amazing artist. She has amazing sensibilities in everything she touches, and I'm happy to collaborate with her always.
So how did those take form? Meaning, like visually, like is some of the patterning coming? That's coming from Gally's voice. I mean, I know it's a collaborative voice, but if you had to break down kind of how.
Right. So we started playing around with the plotter, with an XY plotter here in Alfred. It's like you know, a little robot arm with you can put any kind of tool on it, and it can, you know, use that tool. So a lot of times you just put a pen or a pencil in it and it draws. But we were interested in the ability to like carve into clay with it, right? So we started doing these digital drawings and making these big nice slabs that Gali knows how to make really well, and just carving images. We're both interested in layering, like what happens when you have red clay and white clay, and then you carve through it, and then you add glaze to that, and another layer of glaze to that. Like we're constantly adding stuff to the work. And in one of the pieces that's in the gallery right now, so we weren't happy with the way the second glaze looked after we refired it. So we took some more glaze, and then we put it in the laser etcher, and we actually laser etched the glaze. So in one of them, you'll see later on, look at it, the one with the big green mark, it has blue lines in it.
So it's like you almost sintered those in after?
Yeah, so the laser sintered the blue lines. And so we both have that interest of, like, you know, the ability in clay particularly, you know, to layer stuff. Like you have those glazes and you have those marks in the clay, and things just come through, and they even if you lose sight of them sometimes, they're still in there. They still make a difference in the surface. So yeah, so that's like, we found some common ground there. And also, I'm always looking for pathways to insert digital processes in with clay, right? Because I feel like, you know, the conversation always leads to like, 3D print it, you know. But there's so many other digital pathways between clay and the digital world that can be really amazing. And so like with the cast objects, those big cylinders you have, so some of them are they're plotted as well. They have like black underglazed pencil marks that were plotted in the surface of the mold, like that cardboard that I use as a print. I'll use the plotter to make marks on the surface, and that gets transferred into the cast piece.
So start me at the beginning there with process. So I've seen images of when when it's flat, and and that's what you're talking about there. So maybe just start there for me and just kind of go through.
Yeah, so it's a reverse process, right? So normally you'd build an object. I don't know what normal is, but theoretically, normally.
Sure. Historically normal.
traditionally, right?
Traditional, that's better. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, yeah. You build an object out of clay, and then you maybe put some underglaze on it, and then you put some glaze on that, and then you fire it, right? So this process is a little bit reversed. I work from the surface, from the outer edge of the surface in. Okay, so
Okay. Yeah.
I have a flat piece of cardboard, and I put a layer of glaze on there, and then print a bunch of glazes, and then do some underglaze pencil plotting or other sorts of marks. And then I'll take that flat piece and roll it up and put it in a cylinder, in a cardboard cylinder, and cast porcelain into it. So the first layer that I put down on the print is actually the how would I say, the outermost layer.
Yeah, yeah.
And then each layer I print is in until I get to the casting itself, right? So it's sort of this, it's a reverse.
Yeah, optically it really is a reverse, because what you aren't gonna, what you put on last is what you'd see the least of, because it'd be Okay. And then you said you cast into those, and have you found, I mean, does that casting process feel similar to plaster? I mean, I'm sure timing wise things are a little bit different, but I mean, ultimately things absorb, and you still have to dump the mold after, all those sort of basic slip casting principles. It's nothing too wacky.
Yeah, it really is very similar. There's I'm sort of skipping over. There's the Seinfeld yada 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 episode. It's like I'm yada yada yadaing over a bunch of technical stuff that really took a couple of years probably.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And how, like, for instance, just casting into cardboard, the slip will stick to the cardboard and like try and shrink with it, and then it'll crack and break, and you'll get nothing out of it. So just trying to figure how to.
Okay, yeah. So it wasn't as straight, and I knew it wasn't. You don't need to share your secrets necessarily, but like, okay.
I'm happy to. By the way, I think this is not. I started out thinking that this would be an alternative to alternative production method, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I was working for a long time. I was laser cutting the molds out of cardboard. So I'd figure the model out in 3D, in a 3D program, flatten it out, laser cut the mold, and fold the mold up and cast into it. And I thought I was, doing an alternative production method, and it is an alternative production method, but it's a rather lousy one. It takes so much to make a nice object. As I guess everything.
Yeah. And then, do you get, because I guess all the glaze and everything is on these things, do you single fire them, or is that just like straight up to temp for the most part? I mean, you don't have to, there's no need for a bisque, right? If you're not adding anything. No. So what we see when we look at these cylinders, then, I mean, it really is, it's from the outside in, the mark making that you put on the paper. Yeah. And then that of course reinforced by the casting that you put behind it. Yeah. And then really just fires. So there's really no other, all the surface elements are added at step one.
Right. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Okay.
And cool. And the glaze that we've devised for having that actually work is, it takes a particular glaze because it won't stick to the casting well. Like most glazes won't stick well to the casting. So yeah. It needs a particular glaze, and that glaze has this quality that it's highly loaded in clay, but it has this quality that it like really pulls the form. So in some places you get these like tears or cracks or all these different deformations that happen. So when they come out of the mold, they're these perfect cylinders, like these really accurate, nice, perfect cylinders. When they come out of the kiln, they're just like they're messed up. And a lot of that is just that glaze. That's like this particular glaze likes to wreak havoc in the porcelain.
Interesting. Well, yeah, I noticed on some, the pulling was even really in subtle areas, like some almost just like wrinkling, like on a paper bag, even like just the feeling of of paper. I thought that was, we'll try and showcase some of those images, because some of those close-ups really just start to tell that story, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think it's neat that you're able to go from that design place to then allowing the kiln and the material to do its thing as well, that it's not, I actually think that that gives them, I would loosely use the word personality, but like they're a lot more alive that way than sort of sometimes when people get so caught up in that perfection or sense of perfection, there's a sterileness to the work. And that's what was exciting to me as the work was developing and kind of getting ready to come to us here in Portland, was seeing that sort of that freedom and that material expression.
Just on that topic, you know, and design is tied up with industry, right? And we normally think of design as a process within an industrial setting, right? And in that sense, you know, designers need to make things that are controlled and
repeatable
and accurate, right? Because otherwise the factory will fire them because they'll be able to make no money because it can't produce reliable objects. But actually the practice of design is for me much broader than that, you know. So my interest in ceramics is the ability to, like, it's an endless resource for ideas and research. You can always ask questions in clay and you'll always get the craziest answers out of it. And it's, you know, the inquiry is endless. So that's my interest there. There's also the sort of industrial design, you know, let's get the best reliable result we can, but there's also just that, you know, that interest in its ability to give you these strange answers that you never thought it would give.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I can't think of anything else to take up your time with right now. We can certainly follow up throughout the month. I think this was awesome. I think everyone will appreciate being able to hear all these things. And if you haven't already checked out the exhibition, we've got everything up online. So both on the website, and we'll be sharing lots of process and install shots through Instagram and Facebook and our social media. So thank you so much, Johnathan, for taking the time to work through all this with me. And
thanks, Brett, for hosting me and that was a really interesting conversation, so thanks for the questions too.
Oh, good. I'm glad you felt the same. I think this is great. Awesome. Well, let's be in touch soon, and I look forward to continuing to work with you.
Me too.
Awesome, man.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.